Batik is a technique of wax-resist dyeing applied to whole cloth, or cloth made using this technique. Batik is made either by drawing dots and lines of the resist with a spouted tool called a canting, or by printing the resist with a copper stamp called a cap. The applied wax resists dyes and therefore allows the artisan to color selectively by soaking the cloth in one color, removing the wax with boiling water, and repeating if multiple colors are desired. A tradition of making batik is found in various countries, including Indonesia, Malaysia, Singapore, India, Bangladesh, Sri Lanka, Philippines and Nigeria. The batik of Indonesia, however, is the best known. Indonesian batik made in the island of Java has a long history of acculturation, with diverse patterns influenced by a variety of cultures, and is the most developed in terms of pattern, technique, and the quality of workmanship. On October 2009, UNESCO designated Indonesian batik as a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. Etymology. The word batik is Javanese in origin. It may either come from the Javanese word amber and titik, or may derive from a hypothetical Proto-Austronesian root *betik. The word is first recorded in English in the Encyclopedia Britannica of 1880, in which it is spelled batik. It is attested in the Indonesian archipelago during the Dutch colonial period in various forms: Mbatik, Mbatik, Batek and Batik. History. Wax-resist dyeing of fabric is an ancient art form. It already existed in Egypt in the 4th century BC, where it was used to wrap mummies. Linen was soaked in wax, and scratched using a stylus. In Asia, the technique was practiced in China during the Tang dynasty, and in India and Japan during the Nara period. In Africa it was originally practiced by the Yoruba tribe in Nigeria, Soninke and Wolof in Senegal. These African version, however, uses cassava starch or rice paste, or mud as a resist instead of beeswax. The art of batik is most highly developed in the island of Java in Indonesia. In Java, all the materials for the process are readily available: cotton and beeswax and plants from which different vegetable dyes are made. Indonesian batik predates written records. G.P. Rufer argues that the technique might have been introduced during the 6th or 7th century from India or Sri Lanka. On the other hand, the Dutch archaeologist J. L. A. Brands and the Indonesian archaeologist F. A. Suchjipto believe Indonesian batik is a native tradition, since in other regions in Indonesia such as Toraja, Flores, Halmahera, and Papua, which were not directly influenced by Hinduism, have an age-old tradition of batik making. Rufer reported that the Gringsing pattern was already known by the 12th century in Kediri, East Java. He concluded that this delicate pattern could be created only by using the canting, an etching tool that holds a small reservoir of hot wax, and proposed that the canting was invented in Java around that time. The carving details of clothes worn by East Javanese Prajnaparamita statues from around the 13th century show intricate floral patterns within rounded margins, similar to today's traditional Javanese Jelamprang or Seplok batik motif. The motif is thought to represent the lotus, a sacred flower in Hindu-Buddhist beliefs. This evidence suggests that intricate batik fabric patterns applied with the canting existed in 13th century Java or even earlier. In Europe, the technique was described for the first time in the History of Java, published in London in 1817 by Stamford Raffles, who had been a British governor for the island. In 1873, the Dutch merchant Van Rijkevorsel gave the pieces he collected during a trip to Indonesia to the Ethnographic Museum in Rotterdam. Today the Tropen Museum houses the biggest collection of Indonesian batik in the Netherlands. The Dutch and Chinese colonists were active in developing batik, particularly coastal batik, in the late colonial era. They introduced new patterns as well as the use of the capta to mass-produce batiks. Displayed at the Exposition Universelle at Paris in 1900, the Indonesian batik impressed the public and artists. In the 1920s, Javanese batik makers migrating to Malaya introduced the use of wax and copper blocks to its east coast. In sub-Saharan Africa, Javanese batik was introduced in the 19th century by Dutch and English traders. The local people there adapted the Javanese batik, making larger motifs with thicker lines and more colors. In the 1970s, batik was introduced to Australia, where Aboriginal artists at Ernabella have developed it as their own craft. Technique. Firstly, a cloth is washed, soaked and beaten with a large mallet. Patterns are drawn with pencil and later redrawn using hot wax, usually made from a mixture of paraffin or beeswax, sometimes mixed with plant resins, which functions as a dye resist. The wax can be applied with a variety of tools. A pen-like instrument called a canting is the most common. A canting is made from a small copper reservoir with a spout on a wooden handle. The reservoir holds the resist which flows through the spout, creating dots and lines as it moves. For larger patterns, a stiff brush may be used. Alternatively, a copper block stamp called a cap is used to cover large areas more efficiently. After the cloth is dry, the resist is removed by boiling or scraping the cloth. The areas treated with resist keep their original color. When the resist is removed, the contrast between the dyed and undyed areas forms the pattern. This process is repeated as many times as the number of colors desired. The most traditional type of batik, called batik tulis, is drawn using only the canting. The cloth need to be drawn on both sides and dipped in a dye bath 3 to 4 times. The whole process may take up to a year. It yields considerably finer patterns than stamped batik. Culture. Indonesia. Many Indonesian batik patterns are symbolic. Infants are carried in batik slings decorated with symbols designed to bring the child luck, and certain batik designs are reserved for brides and bridegrooms, as well as the families. Some designs are reserved for royalties, and even banned to be worn by commoners. Consequently, a person's rank could be determined by the pattern of the batik he or she wore. Further study to the geometry of symbolism in Indonesian batik showed the applicability of fractal geometry in traditional designs. Batik garments play a central role in certain Javanese rituals, such as the ceremonial casting of royal batik into a volcano. In the Javanese Neloni Mitoni ceremony, the mother-to-be is wrapped in 7 layers of batik, wishing her good things. Batik is also prominent in the Tedak Sitan ceremony when a child touches the earth for the first time. In October 2009, UNESCO designated Indonesian batik as a masterpiece of oral and intangible heritage of humanity. As part of the acknowledgement, UNESCO insisted that Indonesia preserve its heritage. Popularity. The popularity of batik in Indonesia has varied. Historically, it was essential for ceremonial costumes and it was worn as part of a kabaya dress, commonly worn every day. The use of batik was already recorded in the 12th century, and the textile has become a strong source of identity for Indonesians crossing religious, racial and cultural boundaries. The batik industry of Java flourished from the late 1800s to early 1900s, but declined during the Japanese occupation of Indonesia. With increasing preference of Western clothing, the batik industry further declined following the Indonesian independence. Batik has somewhat revived at the turn of the 21st century, through the efforts of Indonesian fashion designers to innovate batik by incorporating new colors, fabrics, and patterns. Batik has become a fashion item for many Indonesians, and may be seen on shirts, dresses, or scarves for casual wear. It is a preferred replacement for jacket and tie at certain receptions. Traditional batiks are sarongs are still used in many occasions. After the UNESCO recognition for Indonesian batik on the 2nd of October 2009, the Indonesian administration asked Indonesians to wear batik on Fridays, and wearing batik every Friday has been encouraged in government offices and private companies ever since. The 2nd of October is also celebrated as National Batik Day in Indonesia. Batik had helped them improve the small business local economy. Batik sales in Indonesia had reached Rp 3.9 trillion in 2010, an increase from Rp 2.5 trillion in 2006. The value of batik exports, meanwhile, increased from $14.3 million in 2006 to $22.3 million in 2010. Batik is also popular in the neighboring countries of Singapore and Malaysia. It is produced in Malaysia with similar, but not identical, methods to those used in Indonesia. Prior to UNESCO's recognition and following the 2009 Pandai controversy, Indonesia and Malaysia disputed the ownership of batik culture. However, Dr. Fiona Kerlog of the Horniman Museum argued that the Malaysian printed wax textiles, made for about a century, were quite a different tradition from the very fine, traditional Indonesian batiks produced for many centuries. Batik is featured in the national airline uniforms of the three countries, represented by batik prints worn by flight attendants of Singapore Airlines, Garuda Indonesia and Malaysian Airlines. The female uniform of Garuda Indonesia flight attendants is a modern interpretation of the Kartini-style kebaya with parang gondo suli motifs. Terminology: batik is traditionally sold in 2.25-meter lengths used for kain panjang, a sarong. It is worn by wrapping it around the hip, or made into a hat known as blankon. The cloth can be filled continuously with a single pattern or divided into several sections. Certain patterns are only used in certain sections of the cloth. For example, a row of isosceles triangles, forming the pasang motif, as well as diagonal floral motifs called dorong, are commonly used for the head. However, pasang and dorong are occasionally found in the body. Other motifs such as buketan and birds are commonly used in either the head or the body. The head is a rectangular section of the cloth which is worn at the front. The head section can be at the middle of the cloth, or placed at one or both ends. The pattern inside of the head can be used to determine whether the cloth is kain panjang or sarong. The body is the main part of the cloth and is filled with a wide variety of patterns. The body can be divided into two alternating patterns and colors called pagi saw. Brighter pattern are shown during the day, while darker pattern are shown in the evening. The alternating colors give the impression of two batik sets. Margins are often plain, but floral and lace-like patterns, as well as wavy lines described as a dragon, are common in the area besides sere. Types. As each region has its own traditional pattern, batiks are commonly distinguished by the region they originated in, such as batik Solo, batik Pekalongan, and batik Madura. Batiks from Java can be distinguished by the general pattern and colors into batik Pedalaman or batik Pesisir. Batiks which do not fall neatly into one of these two categories are only referred to by the region. A mapping of batik designs from all places in Indonesia depicts the similarities and reflects cultural assimilation within batik designs. Javanese batik, inland batik, batik Kratin is the oldest form of batik tradition known in Java. Inland batik has earthy colors such as black, indigo, brown, and sogan, sometimes against a white background, with symbolic patterns that are mostly free from outside influence. Certain patterns are reserved for royalty, while others are worn on specific occasions. At a Javanese wedding, for example, example, the bride wears specific patterns at each stage of the ceremony. Noted inland batiks are produced in Solo and Yogyakarta, cities traditionally regarded as the center of Javanese culture. Batik Solo typically has Sogan background and is preserved by the Susuhunan and Mangkunegaran court. Batik Jogja typically has white background and is preserved by the Yogyakarta Sultanate and Pakualaman court. Coastal batik is produced in several areas of northern Java and Madura. In contrast to inland batik, coastal batiks have vibrant colors and patterns inspired by a wide range of cultures as a consequence of maritime trading. Recurring motifs include European flower bouquets, Chinese phoenix, and Persian peacocks. Noted coastal batiks are produced in Pekalongan, Cirebon, Lasem, Tuban, and Madura. Pekalongan has the most active batik industry. A notable subtype of coastal batik called Jawa Hokokai is not attributed to a particular region. During the Japanese occupation of Indonesia in early 1940, the batik industry greatly declined due to material shortages. The workshops funded by the Japanese, however, were able to produce extremely fine batiks called Jawa Hokokai. Common motifs of Hokokai includes Japanese cherry blossoms, butterflies, and chrysanthemums. Another coastal batik called Tiga Negri is attributed to three regions: Lasem, Pekalongan, and Solo, where the batik would be dipped in red, blue, and Sogan dyes respectively. As of 1980, batik Tiga Negri was only produced in one city, Sundanese batik. Sundanese or Priangan batik is the term for batik from the Priangan region of West Java and Banten. Although Priangan batiks can use a wide range of colors, a preference for indigo is seen in some of its variants. Natural indigo dye made from indigo fera is among the oldest known dyes in Java, and its local name Tarim has lent its name to the Citarum River and the Tarumanagara Kingdom, which suggests that ancient West Java was once a major producer of natural indigo. Noted Priangan batik is produced in Ciamis, Garut, and Tasik Malaya. Other traditions include batik Kuningan influenced by batik Cirebon, batik Banten that developed quite independently, and an older tradition of batik Badwi. Batik Banten employs bright pastel colors and represents a revival of a lost art from the Sultanate of Banten, rediscovered through archaeological work during 2002 to 2004. 12 motifs from locations such as Shurasawan and several other places have been identified. Batik Badwi only employs indigo color in shades ranged from bluish-black to deep blue. It is traditionally worn as ikat, a type of Sundanese headdress similar to Balinese udeng, by outer Badwi people of Lebak Regency, Banten, Sumatran batik. Trade relations between the Melayu Kingdom in Jambi and Javanese coastal cities have thrived since the 13th century. Therefore, coastal batik from northern Java probably influenced Jambi. In 1875, Haji Mahibat from central Java revived the declining batik industry in Jambi. The village of Mudunglat in Palayangan district is known for producing batik Jambi. Batik Jambi, as well as Javanese batik, influenced the Malaysian batik. The Minangkabau people also produce batik called Batiak Tanaliak, which use clay as dye for the fabric. The fabric is immersed in clay for more than one day and later designed with motifs of animal and flora. The batik from Bengkulu, a city on west coast of Sumatra, is called batik Basirik, which literally means batik with letters, as they draw inspiration from Arabic calligraphy. Balinese batik. Batik making in the island of Bali is relatively new, but a fast-growing industry. Many patterns are inspired by local designs, which are favored by the local Balinese and domestic tourists. Objects from nature such as frangipani and hibiscus flowers, birds or fishes, and daily activities such as Balinese dancer and Naban processions are religious and mythological creatures such as barong, kala and winged lion are common. Modern batik artists express themselves freely in a wide range of subjects. Contemporary batik is not limited to traditional or ritual wearing in Bali. Some designers promote batik Bali as elegant fabric that can be used to make casual or formal cloth. Using high-class batik, like handmade batik tulis, can show social status. Malaysia batik was mentioned in the 17th century Malay annals. The legend goes when Lask Amanah Hang Nadim was ordered by Malacca King, Sultan Mahmud, to sail to India to buy 140 pieces of sparata cloth with 40 types of flowers depicted on each. Unable to find any that fulfilled the requirements explained to him, he made up his own. On his return, unfortunately his ship sank and he only managed to bring 4 pieces, earning displeasure from the Sultan. The method of Malaysian batik making is different from those of Indonesian Javanese batik, the pattern being larger and simpler with only occasional use of the canting to create intricate patterns. It relies heavily on brush painting to apply colors to fabrics. The colors also tend to be lighter and more vibrant than deep-colored Javanese batik. The most popular motifs are leaves and flowers. Malaysian batik often displays plants and flowers to avoid the interpretation of human and animal images as idolatry, in accordance with local Islamic doctrine. However, the butterfly theme is a common exception. Indians are known to use resist method of printing designs on cotton fabrics, which can be traced back 2,000 years. Initially, wax and even rice starch were used for printing on fabrics. Until recently, batik was made only for dresses and tailored garments, but modern batik is applied in numerous items, such as murals, wall hangings, paintings, household linen, and scarves, with livelier and brighter patterns. Contemporary batik making in India is also done by the deaf women of Delhi. These women are fluent in Indian Sign Language and also work in other vocational programs. Sri Lanka. Over the past century, batik making in Sri Lanka has become firmly established. The Sri Lankan batik industry is a small-scale industry which can employ individual design talent and mainly deals with foreign customers for profit. It is now the most visible of the island's crafts, with galleries and factories, large and small, having sprung up in many tourist areas. Rows of small stalls selling batiks can be found all along Hikadwa's Gaul Road strip. Maharawa, on the other hand, is famous for its batik factories. China batik is done by the ethnic people in the southwest of China. The Miao, Bui and Gethia people use the resist method for their traditional costumes. The traditional costumes are made up of decorative fabrics, which they achieve by pattern weaving and wax resist. Almost all the Miao decorate hemp and cotton by applying hot wax, then dipping the cloth in an indigo dye. The cloth is then used for skirts, panels on jackets, aprons and baby carriers. Like the Javanese, the traditional patterns also contain symbolism. The patterns include the dragon, phoenix, and flowers. Africa. In Africa, where batik was originally imported by Dutch merchants from Indonesia, paste made from starch or mud is used as a resist instead of wax. The most developed resist dyeing skills are to be found in Nigeria, where the Yoruba make adar cloths. Two methods of resist are used: adar eleso, which involves tied and stitched, and adar aleko that uses starch paste. paste. The paste is most often made from cassava starch, rice, and other ingredients boiled together to produce a smooth, thick paste. The Yoruba of West Africa use cassava paste as a resist, while the Soninke and Wolof people in Senegal uses rice paste. The Bamana people of Mali use mud as a resist. Gallery. Indonesian batik. Batik processing. People wearing batik